Hello, I'm Dr. Pierre Simon, and it's wonderful being back with you. Well, we're continuing in this series. I believe this is going to be our last video on this series. It's kind of gone into something big. I have something like 260, I think it's 260 pages of PDF now, and I'm starting to work on editing this into a book format. So it'll be in a book at some point in the future for those that want to follow up with this. It's been fascinating, and I've really enjoyed doing this series. We'll get into some new subjects next time. I've also had cataract surgery, and so you notice I don't have my glasses today. I had 2 cataract surgeries over the month of November. And so I'm seeing better with since having the surgeries. However, haven't gotten the new lenses yet, so things are still a little foggy up close. And so if I squint a little bit, it's because of that. Well, I hope in this series you've gained some interesting information. At the end here, you know, we've followed through unmasking addiction in 6 essential areas. We talked about unmasking spiritual origins of the addictive process. We spoke of unmasking behavioral origins of personality, of the brain on drugs, and recovery was a long segment. And then this final segment that we've been on is unmasking relapse prevention. And of course, today we're talking about return to use. And at return to use is pretty much, that's about as far as you're going to go. Once you go back into use, then it's repeating the whole cycle all over again of what we've been talking about. Treatment is, for some, they say it's better the second time around. For others, they say it's harder or more difficult. I suppose it just depends on the individual. But there's 10 compromising warning signs in recovery and relapse. And it's internal warning signs that we watch out for, the avoidance behaviors that we watch out for, crisis building, you know, as the different occurrences. You tend to cause problems, creating more crisis. And it's not always intentional, most of the time it's not intentional, but as you get more angst welling up inside, you tend to say and do things you wouldn't normally do. So that, that part of you that knows not to say this or knows not to do that, it's like you've been drinking and it's kind of nullified that part, and now it's starting to come up, which is causing more crisis. Immobilization occurs, confusion and overreaction will occur. Then comes depression. We've spoken about that. Behavioral loss of control, recognizing the loss of control. So there's behavioral loss, and then there's recognizing it. So the behavioral loss comes first, believe it or not. Then it's, oh, oops, you know, look what I did, and I guess I can't do that again. Option reduction we spoke of, and that's where, gosh, now that I've messed up things in going towards this relapse, I've lessened my options. The options aren't there like they once were. It's limited. It's like tunnel vision now. It's going into a fine point of, there's not very many options. It may have eliminated support. It may have eliminated friends. It may have eliminated sources of treatment or help. Or the medications necessary, if medications are necessary, because perhaps you've abused it or you've not returned back to the doctor as you should have for getting the new prescription refilled or something like that. You've reduced your options, and now it's returning to use. Now it's, what choice do I have? And it's surrender. You're giving up. And so we're talking about that number 10 segment today of returning to use and abuse. The phenomenon of relapsing into substance addiction releases a cascade of issues characterized by physical, emotional, and spiritual disintegration. So it's not just one thing that occurs. It's a whole bunch of stuff that happens. And it is like a collapse. And it often experienced during the return to the substance or just before it, and it entails a series of profound and intricate changes. But the first being physical. Physical collapse in addiction relapse is the body's role of addiction and relapse. So physically, the body having once adapted to abstinence, once adapted to not using at all, now the body is healthier and feeling better. They call that neuroadaptation. Now that's changing once you return to the drug. And when you're thinking about returning to the drug, you're actually starting the process of being on the drug before you even take the drug, whether it's drinking or drugging or an addictive behavior. If you think about it enough, your mind is switching on and off the code on the DNAs, and that code changes the neuroplasticity, and the more you think about it, the more those old neurons, those old receptors are now reconnecting. And now it feels like it. You start feeling it even though you're not doing it. Well, when that happens, it's a whole lot harder to say no. It's a whole lot harder because the impulse now is stronger. And then comes total surrender. Reintroduction can lead to a range of physiological responses. Heightened tolerance occurs. When you stop, let's say you've been doing it for 10 years, whatever it might be, and you stop, you're in treatment for 6 months, a year, or longer, and then you go back to it, you actually think you're going to have less tolerance because you haven't been doing it for a while, but the brain doesn't forget. It's reactivating things. Tolerance comes back faster. So you build more tolerance sooner than when you first started in whatever it was you were doing. Withdrawal symptoms and withdrawal potential occurs. So physically, here come the withdrawal symptoms again. Here you've been through the treatment, you've done well, you've been healthy, and life has been pretty good, and you go back to it, it's almost like you haven't stopped. The withdrawals are just as bad, if not worse. Exacerbation of physical health. Physical health gets worse. Reemergence of withdrawals will occur, the irrational disconnect. So logically, there's a disconnect that occurs because now the mind's confused. You've just confused everything. You've rattled everything up there. And before you know it, that confusion leads to a change in your identity, a change in your life. And that's when you're more vulnerable to overdosing at that point. So tolerance to substances often decreases during periods of abstinence, but when you go right back into whatever it is, even if it's a behavioral addiction, gambling, pornography, or whatever it might be, the individual relapse, it consumes you, and that potential for going overboard with whatever it is much sooner than before, that potential is there. And so a lot of folks who die from an overdose, it's because they've stopped maybe for weeks, months, years, and they start back with the same amount that they stopped with, thinking, well, that's what I used to do. And the body can't handle it. It's too much. And that creates an overdose. Or the behavior. they go back to what they had stopped with at the end of their previous use and abuse, and it's going overboard. It's too much, too quick, and that gets them into more trouble. And that's that part of that cascading effect. Then there's that emotional collapse that occurs. So there's physical collapse, now emotional collapse, and emotional collapse engenders a deep sense of failure, guilt, shame, despair. It intensifies within the person. Oh, what have I done? Personal failure and disappointment comes not only from yourself, but from others as well. And that adds to the feeling of hopelessness, helplessness, powerlessness. I'm no good, or what's the use, or I'm just going to keep doing it. And so it gives them that excuse to just continue on. Don't turn back, say, I made a mistake, take me back, or I made a mistake, get me, take me back into the program. No, it's okay. It's full surrender at that point. So when that occurs, perspectives change, emotions change, behaviors change. And those things reflect the belief of the heart. What is your heartfelt belief about things? So it's more than just a thought. It's like love. True love isn't just you think you're in love. It's believing you're in love and acting it out. As we've spoken of before, you go by what a man does, not what he says. And us men, we say things, but if we're doing it along with it, then we mean it. Females, they tend to say what they mean, so they're speaking from their heart, and that confuses them. When men say something, they think that must be genuine. No. Is he doing it? Is he treating you royally? Is he treating you with true love? The actions, are the actions connected with what he's saying? Then okay, he's being genuine. And addictions it's the same way. It's part of a heartfelt belief. So when they surrender, the perceptions just kind of go awry. The emotions go awry. Without changing their heart belief, the addiction isn't going to change. They feel dirty, they feel tainted, they feel damaged. Well, they felt that way going into their addiction, going into their use and abuse. It intensifies it, it justifies it, and then going back into it, only it makes it bigger, makes it stronger. We need hope. People who feel that way, who believe that heartfelt belief that they're a problem, then something's amiss there. And they've got to view things from another perspective. And so we often talk about viewing hope, which is God, viewing hope as something that is attainable, but to the one who's just surrendered, who's relapsed, hope is unattainable. It's distant. It's not reachable for them. Their thoughts become the lenses in which they interpret their lives. Well, the biblical aspects of addiction relapse is finding the strength beyond the physical and emotional. The Bible, while not explicitly discussing substance addiction as understood today, provides principles that can be applied to the struggle against addiction and the experience of relapse. Obviously, the Bible tells us basically nobody's perfect. Jesus was perfect. Nobody else is perfect. We're sin-based. We come into the world imperfect. The Bible acknowledges human frailty and susceptibility to temptation. So human weaknesses due to sin. Now, if you don't like the word sin, think of the word wrongdoing, because basically that's what that means. It means wrongdoing. It's wrongdoing as God has identified it in the Bible. If I move this flower over here in a particular culture, that may be wrongdoing because the flower is supposed to be here. So, okay, I'm not going to move it because I don't want to commit a sin in this culture. I don't want to offend in this culture, you might say, do something wrong. God is telling us if we do these wrong things, it's going to negatively impact us spiritually, soulishly in our minds, and physically in our bodies. And so we know, okay, if it says don't do that, well, let's not do it. Let's stay healthy. Let's stay healthy all around. And that's holistic. That's taking everything into consideration. In Romans 7, chapter 7, verse 19, Paul reflects the struggle with this wrongdoing when he says, "For I do not do the good I want to do, but the evil I do not want to do. This keeps going on. This keeps happening. Why do I keep making these decisions or having these bad thoughts or making this mistake?" In psychology, they might call that a conditioned response. Once you've conditioned your neural pathways, the brain networking, once you've conditioned it a certain way, to change that, well, it takes work, it takes effort. It takes changing a whole set of things about you and your environment and so on, which makes it very easy for an old behavior or an old thought to pop back up again when there's a reminder. When the bell rings, whatever that might be. So for Pavlov's dog, when the bell rings, he would salivate even though the food wasn't there. Well, so something might be a reminder of something in the past. In Paul's case, it might be that he was raised stringent, rigid, legalistic, hating those who weren't perfect, you might say. I'm exaggerating there with that, but you get the example. And so every once in a while that might pop up, that reminder, and he knows it's wrong. And why do I feel angry at this person? Why do I feel agitated or impatient at this individual when I know it's wrong? When I know I shouldn't be that way, I shouldn't feel that way. I've got to remind myself what's right and keep doing what's right, even though I'm feeling this or I'm thinking that. This verse can be interpreted as a recognition of the ongoing struggle against destructive behaviors akin to substance addiction or behavioral addictions. There's always something to learn. And I've mentioned before that in counseling, I learn every time there's a session with someone, I learn something new. There's always something to learn. I can be repeating some things, and yet I'm learning something new because it's a different moment in time. A day has gone by, a week has gone by. I'm a little different. I'm seeing things a little differently. I'm hearing things from another vantage point. I'm learning in those experiences. And that happens when we read the Bible. We can read it straight through and say, okay, I know the Bible now. I don't need to reread it. But, then you go back and you read something and you say, oh, I didn't see that in that before. And you might go back to that same verse a week from now and get something more out of it because you've changed. You're a week older. You've had a week more of continued experiences. Now your mind is thinking, perceiving, receiving a little differently. The lens has changed a little bit. And because the lens has changed a little bit, you're grasping more out of that passage. And so it's full of information. You may not get it immediately, but you're getting a little here. Tomorrow you get a little more, next week a little more, next year, 20 years from now. I look back, I've been a Christian now, over 50 years. I go back to scripture, the same scripture I might have read over and over again. I'll get something new out of it because it goes deeper. Each time it goes deeper. When we continue in good changes, it goes deeper. The goodness of those changes go deeper in us, making us stronger, more experienced, wiser, better able to cope with other things, better able to problem solve and so on. It's no different than a child developing in their brain as they get older. Well, we're continuing to develop through our entire lifetime. There are a multitude of Bible lessons and examples, including recognizing human weakness, the hope of redemption, the importance of forgiveness and community support, and the necessity of perseverance and awareness of spiritual aspects. We perceive what we believe. The addict, they're seeing what they believe. If they believe they're a failure, if they believe there's no hope, if they believe they're no good, that's what they're going to see. So the addict is seeing whatever they believe because they're viewing life through distorted lenses. And when you relapse back into addiction, the lenses are put back on. Now, I'm seeing things differently since I've had cataract surgery. My old lenses, when I put them on, it's kind of distorted. Like I can see better now at a distance than I could before. And so those old lenses, now it's a little foggy. And I don't see as well as if I'm not having the lenses. But just up close, I still need an adjustment there. I still need to see a little bit better. And so they'll need to change the lenses so that I can see up close a little bit better. Those changes occur in all of us, whether it's seeing or whether it's an addict in recovery. Unchanged beliefs will result in a continuation of feeling what they thought during their active addiction lifestyle, which is why it's so important to go into treatment if you have a serious problem with addiction, or instead of treatment, going into a support group, a regular support group, not a once a month support group, but one that meets regularly, as often as needed for you. Going back to church, going back to Bible studies or any type of fellowship, support group, keep getting the reinforcement. Emotional pain is an indicator of more significant problems involving beliefs. Simply changing thinking. So you go to a treatment and they just change thinking. Well, think this way, don't think that way. That doesn't work. So they relapse within a few weeks afterwards. It's more serious than that. Got to go deeper than that. Simply changing the thinking about the belief will not dissuade the heart from the idea. Someone said, yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, today is a gift of God, which is why we call today the present. The deep-seated belief in emotional pain and suffering awakens awareness of the pain's power, guides us towards acknowledging the existence of the pain, and ignites a solid desire to take action in response. I'm in pain all day long because of my bad back and neck. When I feel the pain, I know, I need to move. I need to adjust. I may need to get up and walk around a little bit. I may need to stretch a little. I need to do something to relieve this immediate pain that I'm experiencing. If I didn't have the pain, then I would just continue with whatever I'm at, and it would cause the condition to get worse, to become worse. The pain is a reminder. The pain is like an alarm system. It's like a red flag waving, hey, you got to do something here. Emotional pain isn't much different. It's waving the flag. It's saying you got to do something here. Well, so what do I do? Well, that's where you have to figure out what's the problem. We must allow ourselves to feel emotionally damaging pain when we believe lies. Escaping to a drug, escaping to sex, escaping to pornography, escaping to gambling, escaping to alcohol, that's not addressing the problem. That's allowing yourself to run away from the pain, the discomfort, whatever it is. And all that's going to do is reinforce to keep doing it. We've got to identify what's the problem, what's the core belief inside of me that's driving me to doing these things, these wrongdoings. When we think truthfully, we must also feel peace. You know, when I'm being honest with my emotions, I'm going to feel peace. I'm going to feel a full range of emotions. When I'm being dishonest with my emotions, I'm not allowing myself to feel the full range of emotions. I'm only going to feel maybe a couple of emotions. It might be anger, it might be joy and happiness, but there's very little in between. Yeah, it doesn't make me balanced if that occurs. Often the behavior of addiction isn't the problem, but the futile attempt to solve the problem. The alcoholic doesn't have a drinking problem. Does that sound funny? The drug addict doesn't have a drug problem. The sex addict doesn't have a sex problem. They have a core problem. The core problem is what needs to be treated. The core problem is what needs to be addressed in treatment or in recovery. It's that phrase that the core problem isn't so much the alcohol or the addictive behavior. It's not the consumption of whatever it is, but rather the underlying issues that lead to the addiction. These can include emotional and mental health issues, trauma, stress, any number of things. Mental and emotional factors need to be addressed. Where are the origins? Where do they come from? You may not even be aware of where they came from, but they came from somewhere. Studies and research now is identifying, as we've spoken of before, and if you read some of my recent blogs, we've talked about neuroplasticity and the changes in the DNA, the changes of the signals to the DNA. The DNA doesn't change, but the turning on and off of DNA changes in our lifetime. We can do that, but it also happens as our mothers carry us in the womb, based on what's going on with her at that time period. The grandmother, what's going on with her that gets passed to the mother, gets passed to the child. Those are actual events that are turning switches on and off in the DNA. Well, if they can be turned on and off, then that means even in our lifetime, we can turn them on and off as well. Some may be harder than others, but some are easier than others. That's where the work is involved in changing our thinking and making those kinds of adjustments. And so in Christian counseling perspective, this phrase of holistic view of things can be understood as recognizing the need for that holistic approach of not just dealing with the mind, the body, but also the spirit. Because as you're dealing with it all, you're strengthening your fortitude, you're increasing the chances that your switches are going to get turned on and off in the DNA to be the way they're supposed to be, the way that God intended them to be. It's not just about stopping the addiction, but also about addressing the spiritual, emotional, and mental needs, the soulish needs, and focusing on all those areas. And so a shift of treatment sometimes is necessary when that occurs. And we want to keep that in mind, that if you don't go to treatment, you still need to do that. And that means, okay, well, I'm not going to treatment, but what do I do? How do I work on this? Well, you got to go to the right people, go to counseling, change your environment to a healthier environment, change your habits to healthier habits, reinforce on a regular basis by going to support groups, going to church, going to Bible studies, anything that's going to help your heart to change for the better. So we have to allow ourselves to feel those emotions instead of running from them. And so many people in addiction recovery, at first they don't want to feel those emotions because then it triggers memories and they're escaping those memories. And yet the pain of looking at the memory brings up what I need to deal with, what I need to get healing for, what switches need to be turned on and off. So there is a short amount of pain in looking at those things, but if it's done right, very quickly, for the most part, very quickly, changes occur that now I can look back at those memories. I don't feel the pain anymore. I might feel compassion. I might feel sadness. I might feel an understanding, an insight that I never had before. And now it's not so bad. That's what the Bible does for us. Truth must move from the head to the heart. Substance and behavioral abuse are short-sighted attempts to solve perceived problems, whether it's anxiety or stress, even boredom. Recovery relapse is a futile attempt to appease what they're trying to distract themselves from. If you're coming out of a family, let's say you have parents or a parent who is unsafe, you escape to feel better, you turn to whatever for those escapes, and you have to go back into that house again. It's difficult, isn't it? It makes it hard. And that's where the support needs to be there. The healthy friends, the healthy networking, so that it strengthens you enough to endure whatever's going on at home for the next day to get back to that healthy environment again. Simply telling them the truth doesn't bring remedy due to their flawed perceptions, emotions, and beliefs. Understanding the complexity of relapse, it's difficult, it's not easy. So you don't have to understand it all, but you have to do it. Relapse is not just a singular event, but a process that unfolds over time, marked by a return to the substance abuse. Understanding these triggers is crucial in developing effective strategies for prevention and for management. So we've talked about physical and emotional. So physical, that's the body. The physical dimension of relapse involves the body's conditioned response to substances. This biological aspect underscores the importance of medical and therapeutic interventions in treating substance addiction or behavioral addictions. Then the soul. The soul is your mind, your intelligence, your will. Emotional triggers such as stress, anxiety, depression are significant contributors to relapse. Developing coping mechanisms and emotional resilience is critical in preventing that relapse. And then there's the spirit. It's that part you don't see. The spiritual aspect of relapse in recovery often involves the journey of self-discovery, the meaning what has given meaning to these things. Are they good meanings or bad meanings in how you perceive things? Identify where's that coming from? Where's that interpretation coming from? Where are those insights coming from? Many find strength and motivation in their faith, their spiritual beliefs, or connections to something greater than themselves. This spiritual grounding can provide the resilience and perspective needed to overcome the challenges of addiction's relapse. It's a new beginning. Even if you've relapsed, a new beginning has to begin somewhere along the line. You've got to make the changes, and with the changes, it's something new. Finally, this crucial new beginning can be a lifetime beginning for anybody, but they have to set their mind to it. They have to be willing to work at it. And to be willing to work at it, I have to believe I can do it. And that's where that repetition helps in believing I can do something. It can be a part of learning process, that journey towards recovery. With the proper support, tools, mindset, individuals struggling with substance addiction or behavioral addictions can find their path to healthier lifestyles. Well, what does the Bible say about all this? I have a long passage I'm going to read, so be patient because it's got a lot of good stuff in here. This is from Romans chapter 7, verses 14 to 25 from the Remedy Bible, which is a paraphrase of the Bible, using keywords, adding the additional meanings of those Hebrew and Aramaic language to the passages and bringing it into a current event viewpoint. And it says here, we know that the law is consistent, reliable, and reasonable, but I'm inconsistent, unreliable, unreasonable, because the infection of distrust, fear, selfishness has warped my mind and damaged my thinking. I'm frustrated with what I do. For having been restored to trust, I want to do what is in harmony with God and His methods. In other words, I don't want to do wrongdoing anymore. I want to do right in the principles of what is right. And it goes on to say, but I find that even though I trust God, my old habits, conditioned responses, preconceived ideas, and other remnants of devastation caused by distrust and selfishness are not yet fully removed. And if I find an old habit causing me to behave in ways that I now find detestable, I affirm that the law is a very helpful tool revealing residual damage in need of healing. In other words, pain is a good thing. If I see the law, so it's talking about God's law, if I see I'm doing a wrong thing, the pain of seeing that, oh, okay, I need to make some adjustments here. I need to work towards doing it right instead of doing it wrong. What's happening is this: I've come to trust God and I desire to do His will. But old habits and conditioned responses, which present almost reflexively in certain situations, have not yet been totally eliminated and thus cause me to do things I don't want to do. I know that my mind was completely infected with distrust, fear, and selfishness. I'm going to pause there for a minute. Distrust comes out of fear and apprehension, causing self-protection. And in that distrust, fear, and self-protection, there's selfishness. Wherever there's fear, there's always going to be selfishness. They go hand in hand. You might not like to see that or think that, but you're thinking of self when you're in fear. You're thinking of protecting yourself. Makes you self-involved. I need something for me to help me because I'm afraid. And now you're thinking only of yourself and not thinking of those around you, of the needs of others, of what's best for everyone else. You're just thinking of what you need for yourself at this moment. That's a form of selfishness, isn't it? So when we drop down into the basement of the brain, as we've spoken of before, where the limbic system is located, the fight or flight center is located, if we dwell down there, we develop fear, we develop self-protection, we develop selfishness. And that gives us an angst to get angry, to protect ourselves, or escape, withdraw, get depressed, or get confused and anxious because it's churning and we got nowhere to put it, and we develop anxiety. It goes on to say, which totally perverted all my desires and faculties, so that even when distrust has been eradicated and trust has been restored, the damage caused by years of distrustful and selfish behavior has not yet been fully healed. In other words, it takes time. Recovery is a lifetime. And we don't want to relapse in that recovery. We want to continue in that recovery. And so it goes on to say, so I find that at times I have the desire to do what is right, but do not yet have the ability to carry out the desire. So we'll pause there again. Okay, don't have the ability. What does that mean? I need a little help. I can't do it by myself. You can't stay in recovery by yourself. You need the support to go along with it. Whatever support works for you. That's healthy support, that is. We need others. And addiction makes us so selfish that we feel like we don't need anybody. We just need to fix it ourselves. Doesn't work that way. For the old habits and conditioned responses are not the good I want to do. No, they're remnants of my selfish, unconverted mind. So if I find myself doing what I no longer desire to do, it's not myself that acts, but the vestiges of old habits and conditioned responses that have yet to be removed. And through God's grace, they'll soon be removed. So if I keep going, if I keep doing what's right, if I get the proper support, especially dealing with not only the body, not only the mind, but the spirit, now I've got a lot of strength, a lot more strength, a lot more passion to stay in recovery than I would if I just dealt with the body or if I just dealt with the mind. Adding the spirit gives me more passion or power. I find this reality at work. When I want to do good, my old selfish habits and residual feelings of fear are right there with me in my hand. I rejoice in God's methods and principles, but I recognize that I remain damaged from years of being infected with distrust and practicing Satan's methods. In other words, the on-off switches of your DNA, the neuroplasticity in the brain, the epigenetic changes that occur in the DNA are getting switched on and off. It takes a while to change those switches. So from years of being infected with distrust and practicing Satan's methods, so that even though the infection of distrust has been removed, the old habits of fear and self-promotion or self-protection, self-promotion tempt me from within. What a damaged and corrupt man I am. Who will deliver and heal me from a brain and body so diseased and deformed? Praise be to God, for he has provided the healing solution through Jesus Christ our Lord. So then I find that in my mind, I'm now renewed with trust in God and love of his methods, doing it his way. But my brain and my body remain damaged by years of self-indulgent behavior. Well, let's improve that by staying consistent, staying in recovery, maintaining that, doing the right things, even when you don't feel like it. Later you look back and you're glad you did the right things. Keep doing those things and go forward. Don't give up. Keep taking care of yourself, because you are valuable in God's eyes, so valuable that he sent his Son to come and teach us about him and to sacrifice, to give up his life for ours so we can follow him into eternity. That's how valuable you are. You have to believe that to be true, though. And if you believe it, it gives you that added strength to try a little harder the next day. Do a little better today than you did yesterday. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this series. We'll start another program next time, but this has been a good series, and I'm sure it's been helpful for quite a few folks. May your troubles be minor, blessings more, and happiness come through your door. We'll see you next time. God bless.